This is gonna be a long vlog showing you how we made this print right here, starting with a logo design that I made a couple of years ago. The design was turned into the foam you saw earlier, and after the foam was made, we went ahead and started stamping. So this was my second time going to the workshop. I just had the idea to make my own fabric and then obviously use the fabric to make an outfit, because like as y'all know, I am a designer, but also now I'm becoming a textile maker. So I wanted the logo to be part of the cloth, and then the cloth would be used to make the outfit. Okay, I already said that. But yeah, so went in there, showed them the logo design, and they were like, oh, okay, we could do that. I was like, okay, bet, love that. So I think it took like 2 to 3 days, give them the design, and then when I came back, the logo was made. And I came back for a second workshop because I wanted to learn. Is the day I actually did the broom technique I posted. On that same day, we made this fabric. So I got there, the stamp was ready, and then we got to work. Well, not we, the maker got to work. So she actually, I think I ordered 20 yards, between 18 and 20 yards, because I know that she was stamping the fabrics in like 6 yards of cloth, so like 6 and then 6 and then 6. So yeah, so I didn't really know how I wanted it to be patterned. I just allowed her to kind of do what she thought would look best. So this is the pattern the pattern of stamping that she picked, and then she just kind of proceeded to stamp in however she wanted. But it looked good to me, so I was like, okay, like, do your thing. So yeah, so here is I think this was like the first one being stamped, and then the 6 yards were done, and then we're gonna move on to the next. But yeah, so I pretty much just watched while she was doing this. I was working on she was also helping me work on the broom fabric, or the fabric that I used the broom to oh my gosh, to batik. Okay, so the stamping is done. We moved on to the dyeing. I wanted green, but I didn't know what kind of green I wanted. So again, I just allowed her to mix up some dye, and I got to see, like, we had a smaller batch, obviously. I said it looked good, and then we made this bigger bucket of dye. So here's the dye. The dye was made, and then obviously had to be in this massive bucket because we had a lot of yards of cloth to dye. And then because of the amount of cloth we were dyeing, she got one of the workers at the workshop to come help her dye the fabric. And here is the worker dye, like, she's kind of feeding the dye to the worker, and the worker's like dyeing it in the large tub of dye. And like I talked about in the previous video, what happens during this process is that the hardened wax cracks because it's in motion. Friction causes the hardened wax to crack like a little bit. It's not visible, but it cracks, and then as the fabric is dyeing, it seeps into those tiny cracks, which creates like this really cool effect on. And I don't think this is what batik cloth is known for. Those crackling effects are obviously part of the process because of what happens here. Okay, so the dyer is, again, the maker is feeding it the dye, and the person dyeing is like making sure that every part of the fabric gets dyed, so that as the color could be as uniform as possible on the fabric. And obviously this doesn't always turn out perfectly because, again, this is handmade, and in the process the fabric honestly just does whatever it wants to do. And this is also why sometimes, like, if I was to go back and try to recreate the same exact fabric, it would probably look different, because when the stamping is gonna vary, because someone is a human stamping it, and then also the way the dye is mixed, the dye color might not come out exactly the same. So again, that's just, to me, that's the beauty of batik, is that the imperfection of it all it's part of the beauty of batik. So yeah, after that process is done, the dyer just goes ahead and kind of like again makes sure that the dye is on in every part of the fabric, and then let the dye sit and let the fabric take on the dye. And while we're waiting, we went ahead and prepared the hot water that would be used to melt out the wax. Here's the hot water, the water heating in the pot, and this is a big pot. It doesn't look big on the camera, but it's a big pot because again all the fabric has to fit in it. And while we were doing that, we also hung the fabric, the dyed fabric, so that it could oxidate and the cloth could like take on the dye, and also so that some dye could like drain out of the fabric. After that, we went right ahead and cooked out the wax. Here is the fabric in the hot pot of water. First you kind of let it sit for a little bit, and then obviously the heat causes the wax to melt, and then the fabric is moved around. As you can see here, they're moving the fabric. She is moving the fabric around, obviously using sticks because she can't use her hands because she's gonna get burned. But yeah, moving the fabric around with the sticks to make sure that all the melted wax comes out of the fabric. And sometimes it really doesn't. Like I've purchased fabric with like remnants of wax on it, but after you wash it with hot water, obviously that comes off. But yeah, so after that process, the fabric is then rinsed in cold water, and cold water obviously helps the maker be able to manipulate the fabric more in the water and make sure that the wax residue comes out of the fabric. And yeah, also any like remnants of dye comes out. And as you can see, like the way she's moving her hands is again to make sure that all of the wax comes out of it. So here she is rinsing it in the first bucket of cold water, again cold water, so that she could actually do this, because if the water was hot, it'd be impossible for her to do this process. So after this, in the first bath, and then she goes ahead and puts it in the second bath, cold water bath, to again continuously rinse out the fabric. And as you can see, this is definitely hard work, takes a lot of labor to produce batik, but this is a very unique and traditional way of producing cloth that produces a very unique kind of textile, which I love and a lot of other people love. Yeah, so after that, we let the fabric to air dry. Throughout this process, everything is like air dried. You just have to be lucky on the day that nature lets you work. And this day was actually pretty gloomy, so it took a while for the fabric to dry. And these are the yards of fabric drying. And then after that, took the fabric to the seamstress and she did her magic, and here is what we created. This is actually practically sold out. There's like 2x left that can kind of fit 1x just depending on the fit. But yeah, obviously came out perfect. I love the fabric, and then obviously also love what I made with it. Here I am just modeling. Thanks for watching. Bye.